Hello everybody and welcome to Alan History Nerd. In this video I am going to look at some hints and tips on how to get an A or A star in A-level politics. So this is by popular demand really, so Blue Comedy and a variety of other people have been asking for this video, so I'm going to try and do my best. I'd love to say that there was some really simple things that you could do and it would guarantee you one of those super high grades, but it's not quite that straightforward. But hopefully the tips I can give you will help you get there and show you the absolute key things that you need to be thinking about and doing. Right, the first up is you need to know what it is you need to know, and that might sound fairly straightforward, but one of the things I would recommend that you do is you actually look at the specification, because that will tell you what it is you need to know. It tells you the various kind of key bullet points of the spec, and it breaks it down into sub bullet points. And if you go through that, you'll find everything that you need to know things about. You'll find that if you're getting good teaching and you're using good textbooks and following good YouTube channels, you'll find that all this stuff will be directed towards the specific content on the specification. But it's worth just double checking. I would always have a copy. I know in my teaching when I'm making these videos, I keep going back to that specification. What does the exam board tell us that you need to know? And it's the kind of thing that I use in my teaching. It's the stuff that I plan my lessons around. It's the stuff that I plan our assessments and things around. So you need to make sure that you're doing that as well. I'm sure your teachers will be doing it, but have that backstop where you look and go, right, actually, what is it I need to know about democracy and participation? What is it I need to know about political parties? What is it I need to know about pressure groups? What is it I need to know about liberalism? So all the different bits, go through, look what the spec says, and create yourself some revision resources or something that fits with that. Another thing to do is to look at the mark schemes and examiners' reports from all the past exams. Obviously, with this being a fairly new spec, there aren't a huge number of them. Pay particular attention to in the examiners' reports where it talks about common mistakes, but most importantly, pay really close attention to the descriptions they give of what happened in the best responses. So really strong responses did this, and then make sure you pay close attention to that, and that's something you want to then try and mimic and repeat when you're doing the exams yourself. Now, this bit is again is straightforward to talk about, but it is harder to do. I mean, one of the problems with A-level politics is just the vast amount of knowledge you can be expected to have, and because it's a slightly more of a niche or minority A-level, it tends to be only chosen by people with a really good level of interest in the subjects, and this actually makes the seeking the highest grades that little bit more difficult, because you need to demonstrate that wealth of up-to-date knowledge and examples that puts you above the other people who are doing the exam. And it's probably going to be the case that most people doing A-level politics have a decent level of interest in it, and therefore have got some good stuff that they can talk about. But if you are going to get an A or an A star, you need to go that extra mile. So this is going to take time and effort, but it should pay off in the end. So 30-mark essays and 30-mark source questions particularly, you need to be able to bring in precisely details to back up your points. To get an A or A star or an A, you need to maximize your A1 score on all questions. Now, this should be the easiest set of points to pick up because it's just knowledge retrieval. But I say it's just knowledge retrieval. To have that knowledge retrieval, you have to have that large bank of knowledge, and you also need to have been practicing before you get to the exam on retrieving that information. So some tips that I would give on this: keep a politics diary that you add examples to as they happen during your course. Do some further research, especially into things such as the key thinkers and political ideas. So the best bit on this is try and make your answer stand out by having material that isn't found in every single decent answer, because all the decent answers and all these decent answers are going to be getting C's and B's and maybe pushing that A boundary. They're just going to be basically repeating the stuff that's in the books. If you're going to be that bomb that stands out, that A star candidate, then you need those bits that are beyond what is just produced in the materials that everybody's going to see. Making sure that you know what you know is really, really important. So everybody, I'm sure, will pay close attention in class, will go and do those bits of reading and keep up to date with the news and things like that as politics students. But reading something once, watching something once, writing something once is not enough. It doesn't mean that you are necessarily going to retain it. I mean, unless you are like Sheldon from Big Bang and you've got a kind of photographic memory, the chances are that just seeing things once or twice is not going to be enough. So you need to train your brain to retrieve the information you've been studying. And the more practice that you do at this, the more the synapses and stuff in your brain all connects up and the easier it becomes. So it takes time and it takes effort, but there's a difference from having seen something, having read something, and from genuinely knowing it. So take time to go back over your work. Don't just think, oh, I've had the lesson, I now know pressure groups. So go back over your notes, go back over the stuff in the textbook, watch my videos on it, all those different kind of things. So make sure you've got it reinforced several times. And one of the things that some of my students sometimes say is hang on a minute, we've been given this in 3 different ways. And it's like, yes, you have. Does that mean you know it? So I use my own videos. Obviously we have the lessons themselves. I might then use something like some textbook reading or another resource, something like Pre-Tube Politics. And I go, well, that said very similar things to what you said, that then said very similar things to what's in the book. And it's like, yes, it did. Because what we're trying to do is to get you to go over that information multiple times, and that will mean that you will know it. Even better is if you test yourself and force that retrieval. So you might want to test your knowledge. You might want to create yourself some flashcards. You might do something and then get somebody to test you on those flashcards, or test yourself on those flashcards. You might do something called a knowledge dump, which is essentially where you set yourself a topic and you write down everything you know around that. And then you might, that might be on a broad topic, it might be on a particular question, and then sit there with your notes and with a different coloured pen, go and add improvements. So things that you didn't remember that time, but you can then go and find it, so you've then got a complete set of notes. Spend some time then going over that. Then put it away, and at another point, a couple of days later, come back and do the same again. And see if actually this time you've got more information, that you've remembered more. Maybe some of the stuff that's in that different coloured pen which you had to go and look up before will be there this time. And keep doing this over time. Create yourself revision diagrams from memory. Again, then go back in and add the detail. So look at something. You might have produced yourself a lovely revision diagram, spent ages on it. It looks really, really good. Right, look at it. Spend a couple of minutes looking at it. Then put it away, cover it up, and have a go reproducing that diagram. Do you know what's on that diagram, or have you just got something that looks really beautiful? Try things like dual coding, and this is when you combine ideas and words with images. And sometimes this can seem a bit silly, and if you're like me and you can't draw, then you might sit there and do these on a computer, and you might pull images off. But there's really proven studies that show that the combining of the two, this dual coding, really works and helps you remember stuff. Now, organising your knowledge and then going through to practice retrieval using the spec is really important. So this is an example using the spec. So this is just a basic format you can have where you've got the topic, you've got the subtopics, and then you can go down the side and you can go, right, have I got examples and details on all of this? And that will check your knowledge in terms of have you covered it. You might want to do it using resources to help you, and then go back and test yourself on it. Cover that final column up and see again, can you retrieve that information? But having yourself an organizer that is full of this, going all the way through the spec with the subtopics and the topics, and then your ideas and examples and details going down the side, this could be a really good way of building yourself a scaffold to make sure you know everything that you need to for the course. I mentioned earlier the politics diary. Now, if you organise yourself with up-to-date examples, and again, then you do yourself some retrieval practice on it, you might pick a theme. So this is a basic version of what I've got my year 13s to be working on at the moment. So the idea is in the column on the far left hand side, they write the week, and then as they go through, they add details. So if there's information that week on the Constitution, something in the news on the Constitution, they add that. If there's something on presidency, they add that. If there's something on elections, obviously there's loads on elections as I'm making this video, then they put something in there. If there's something about the particular beliefs of the parties or the structures of the parties, and it goes in that one. So this should help them cover all the American spec. Now there's the two kind of avatar things next to me is kind of really showing what I think is likely to be an underlying thing between those who get A stars and those who don't do quite so well, is if you are the guy leaping in the air going yes and you are going to do this week in, week out, and you're going to have loads of really good examples, you're going to test yourself and go back over them and see if you can remember them, then you're going to have a great set of knowledge. If you just do it for week 1 and week 2 and then give up and don't think about it anymore, then you're making your life a lot more difficult, and you're less likely to be able to just recall those key bits of information and use them in your exam. Now, knowledge is AO1, and that is the underlying bit. You aren't going to get to the top of the mark schemes unless you know your stuff. So yes, that spends time, but it's not the only thing you need to be worried about. You need to know how to do the different question types. Now, so going into the exam, you need to be really clear on what you should and shouldn't do with all the different types of questions. There are certain golden rules for each different question, and you've got to stick to these if you're going to maximise your mark. I've done a whole series of individual videos looking at the different question types in more detail, but I'm going to give a kind of a brief summary here. So in the source questions, only use the arguments in the source. Even if you know better arguments, that's not going to get you marks. Pair up the arguments that are there, if those are for and those are against. Rank them from the most significant and most important reasons down to the least significant ones in there. Bring in your own examples and knowledge to back up the points and evaluate them. Have a clear judgment going all the way through your answer and stick to it. Undermine the points that go against your judgment. So mark schemes again, and this can be one of the difference between the mid and the very top levels. It talks about balance, and you have to have balance to get to a decent point in the mark scheme. But what's going to put that A answer ahead of some of the others is, although you are looking at both sides of the argument, you are very, very clearly signposting to the person reading your work that this side of the argument is stronger than that side of the argument. So you aren't just doing on one hand and on the other. You're going, on one hand, this is really significant. On the other hand, they argue this, but it's not as strong because. So that is going to make a big difference. And the same goes into 30-mark essays. Again, make sure you define the key terms, stick very tightly to the question. Sometimes these do just turn into knowledge dumps, and people kind of go, oh, is a question on Parliament. Here's everything I know about Parliament. So you have to stick very, very closely to what the question is asking you. There should be a judgment that runs right through from your introduction to your conclusion. If there is not a clear judgment set out in your introduction, which you are then going to argue through the rest of your essay, you will not get an A star. So that introductions are really, really important, and getting that in your mind and running it through the essay is what's going to get you at the very top end. You should link and compare points and counterpoints. So this is the presenting things and undermining it idea. There should be lots and lots of really strong detail, and that goes back to the early part of the video in terms of what you need to know. Other types of question then. So we've got our 24 marks ideas question. You need to again define your key terms, stick closely to the question, judgment from introduction to conclusion again. You must talk about at least 3 of the key thinkers, and if we're going to get an A or an A star, we need really strong detailed explanations of their views in relation to the question. And this is one of the big bits of this, it all has to be comparative. You will be comparing thinkers, you will be comparing different strands of that ideology, and you must be writing it in that way, rather than, and again, this is one of the things that the people are going to get, pick up your C's and things, so they're just going to go, right, this is stuff I know on liberalism. These are some key thinkers. This is what they said on this question. And it won't have the comparison, and it won't have the judgment, therefore it won't get those big marks in AO2 and AO3. The 12-mark questions on paper 3, these again demand comparison. There's no introduction or conclusions in these. The question 1 is going to look at similarity or difference. Pay quite close attention to the question. If it asks only for similarity, only do similarity. Asks only for difference, only do difference. you ask for both, do both. So there's no AO3. You should be comparing on 3 different points. So it should be 3 paragraphs. Your 12-mark question should use at least 1 comparative theory, and that should either be rational, cultural, structural, or rational, cultural, or structural. There's no AO3, no introduction or conclusion. You should analyse, it should be comparative, you should look at similarities and differences. There should be 3 paragraphs comparing on all 3 points. Make sure that you have explanation, evaluation, and linked comparative theory on each point. Making strong, nuanced judgments is one of the most important things in terms of getting the top marks. AO3, which is in the 30 marks, and the 24-mark questions are the hardest marks to get in A-level politics. So it will probably be your performance on this that will determine whether you get that A star or A or not. AO3 demands clear, well-supported judgments in your answers that should be, and you should present a convincing argument to the examiner, not just simply show an understanding of the content. So you're going to argue, essentially. So an A star A answer is one that argues something in relation to the question, rather than one that just does the solid BC thing and just presents 2 sides of an argument and has a little judgment and conclusion at the end. So the BC answers are going to be good, they're going to be solid, but they really are going to be painting by numbers. There will be an introduction that defines the key terms, it will set out the debate, will state briefly an answer, it'll have a balanced main body with some good support stating both sides, it'll have a conclusion stating an answer again, but this is likely to be either sitting on the fence or fairly simplistic. An A or A star answer will do all the basics really well, but will have that argument that will make it stand out. So you will be trying to persuade the person who is reading your work of your view on that answer. And they really do prize this in A-level politics mark schemes in a way that, in even more of a way than they do in a lot of the other humanities ones. For example, things like history. But so this A star answer will be persuasive. Now, you still have to look at the other side of the argument. You just can't completely ignore it. Otherwise, you run the risk of dropping all the way from A star down to CD because it's unbalanced. So you have to present both sides, but you should really be arguing a point, and it really should have a degree of nuance in it. Now, you need to make sure that your judgment is a bit more complex than just agreeing or disagreeing with the statement, and we definitely want to avoid this sitting on the fence bit. This is a continuum. I use this idea with my students all the time, and the idea is that every answer to every question in a subject like politics will be somewhere on a continuum. It'll be something like, to what extent is this, or which is the STEM using the 24-mark questions. It'll be asking you to make a judgment. Now, if you're going to make a judgment, I say, well, it's going to be somewhere on that continuum, somewhere between absolutely and no chance. Now, there are 3, I say, banned spots on that. If you completely agree with the statement, then you're not going to give a balanced answer. And it's going to be not only unbalanced, it's going to be simplistic. It is the case that this about Parliament. It is the case that the Prime Minister is this. It is the case that nationalism is inclusive. So whatever the question is about, then you are going to not want to just simply agree with the view. And equally, you're not just going to completely dismiss it and disagree with it either. So again, that would give you a one-dimensional, unbalanced, simplistic judgment. The one where I think a lot of the people who do reasonably well but don't get that A star do is they make the mistake of going dead middle. Now, I always say don't sit on fences. It's painful, because if you're going to write something like nationalism is both inclusive and exclusive and not give anything, any umph to it and no slant one way or the other, then that doesn't look like a judgment. That just looks like a statement. And you're going, right, yeah, you're painting by numbers. You've been told to do both sides of the argument, and that's what you're going to do. So a really good A-star, A-level answer will be somewhere where those 2 arrows are pointing, somewhere in between the X's. So it'll be going, well, yeah, it is inclusive in some ways, but not in others. It will. This is the case in this scenario, but not in this scenario. Or although you can argue the other side, this side is much stronger because. So it's that bit that is going to give you the answer. Now, I always found when I was writing answers that whenever I write an essay in any subject, I would start by drawing that continuum, and I would decide where I was on the continuum, and I would stick to that argument no matter what. Even if I thought, oh gosh, no, I'm not sure it's quite right anymore, I would still stick to it. So I've got a coherent argument running through my essay. So here's one I made earlier. This is an essay that my students have just done, and this is the kind of thing that I was looking for. So you should add nuance to your argument, show that deep understanding. So this is for a nationalism essay about whether nationalism is inclusive or exclusive, or I think it's to what extent is nationalism an inclusive ideology. So my answer goes, nationalism is broadly exclusive as it divides the world into nations and at its worst excludes people from nations based on their race, language, culture, or place of origin. This is particularly true of chauvinistic nationalism as promoted by Maurras. However, liberal nationalism as promoted by Rousseau is inclusive, especially as seen in the ideas of civic nationalism in the USA. But the reality does not always match the theory. Nationalism, including conservative nationalism, looks to unite a nation around history, culture, and language, including those from across all classes, but only if they fit with the shared criteria. Overall, the fact that most forms of nationalism will exclude people based on the criteria that they have no control over means that it is more exclusive than inclusive. So in that, you'll see that there is a balance in there. I have acknowledged two sides of the argument, but whenever I'm looking at anything that suggests that nationalism is inclusive, there's a but. And so I'm sure this side isn't as strong. And I start saying it's broadly exclusive, and I end saying, again, going back onto the idea that it is largely exclusive. I've acknowledged there is some nuance in there. There are some ways in which you can argue it's inclusive, but overall, it is exclusive. And that's the kind of thing you want to get into your judgments. And these judgments are really important. So you're not just presenting stuff that you know at A star and A. You are making an argument, and you are going to back that up through your essay, and you're going to stick to it consistently. So when that examiner gets to the end, they'll go, right, was there a substantiated argument and judgment? And if the only answer they can give to that is yes, yes, there was, and it was well supported, and they knew lots of stuff, then that is level 5. And if you get level 5, you're right up there, and you're going to get an A star. Now, this last point, it might seem minor compared to some of the other stuff I'm talking about, analysis and judgment and knowledge and all the rest of it. But timing, I've found in the past, has been the Achilles heel of some very, very good students. So it seems trivial, but if you end up with an incomplete answer, their chances are that will cost you a grade. And obviously this is a mistake you can't afford if you're aiming at A star A. So almost all A grade and all A star grade papers I've ever seen would include complete answers for every question. Now, a partial answer will not get you above level 2. A rushed answer will most likely lack detail, so pull you down on AO1, even worse, will be missing analysis, so the comparative stuff, which will cost you an AO2, or might be just missing it might be completely missing the judgment required for the top level. So you won't have had the time to get into the nuance in the argument at that high level. So one bad answer, because you've done it in half the time you should spend on it, is one of the things that will cost a good student a high grade. So if you're going to get that A star A, you need to be practicing doing things in time conditions to make sure that you can nail it in the required time, and you don't end up with a couple of amazing answers, one rushed answer and one partial answer. Because if you end up with that kind of thing on an exam paper, it's going to really kind of cost you. So timing is really important. Thank you for watching. I hope that is what people wanted in terms of some hints and tips on how to achieve those ultra high grades. And there should be some good ideas in there for you in terms of building your revision and your knowledge and thinking about your technique when it comes to doing your exams. If you need more on A-level politics, then subscribe to my channel and check out my A-level politics playlist. Over 100 videos on it already, and I'm going to keep on going until I have completely covered the specification. That might take me a while, particularly now we're back in college. Right. Thank you again for watching.